What if I told you there might be a way to slow down or even prevent those graying hairs? They're a visible sign of aging, but are they inevitable? Today, we're diving into a fascinating study from Nagoya University in Japan that explores luteolin, a natural compound, and its potential to keep your hair its natural color. They tested it on mice, both topically and as a supplement. So let's have a look at the results. Now, it's important to understand this study wasn't about reversing grey hair. The researchers were focused on prevention. To study this in humans would take decades, so they turned to mice that were genetically predisposed to grey early, mimicking a process very similar to what happens in humans. To understand how it works, we have to look at the cells in your hair. Hair is made of keratin, and that's produced by keratinocyte stem cells, or KSCs. As we age, these KSCs can become senescent, meaning they basically stop working as efficiently. This is indicated by an increase in a protein called P16 and a decrease in endotheliin. Now, endotheliin is crucial because it supports melanocytes, or MSCs, the cells that produce melanin, the pigment that gives your hair its color. The researchers found that luteolin helps reduce senescence in the KSCs, as seen by a decrease in P16 in the hair follicles. This in turn helps maintain endotheliin levels, supporting the survival of those crucial melanocytes. So, in essence, luteolin helps keep the pigment-producing cells alive and functioning. All right, let's dive into the study itself and see what the researchers actually did. They conducted two main trials with luteolin. In each trial, they split the mice into two groups, an intervention group and a control group, with 5 mice in each. All the studies ran for 16 weeks, from when the mice were 20 weeks old until they were 36. Now, in mice years, that's roughly equivalent to a human going from 20 to 31 years old. But remember, these mice were genetically chosen to gray early, and so we're seeing an accelerated process. In the first group, they applied 200 microliters of a 1% luteolin solution directly to the mice's back every single day. This solution was made by dissolving luteolin in 70% ethanol. The second group received luteolin orally at a dose of 0.5 milligrams per gram body weight. Now, here's where it gets a bit tricky. The paper itself doesn't give us the exact details of how they administered it, but it references an earlier study where they dissolved luteolin in potassium hydroxide and put it into the drinking water. Just for reference, if we do some calculations using a conversion factor to estimate a human equivalent, we're looking at about 3 grams for a 75 kilogram person. So that's quite a bit higher than a typical 100 to 500 milligram dose used in human trials. So it's worth keeping in mind. Interestingly, they also tested 2 other antioxidants, hesperetin and diosmetin, applied topically in the same way. But surprisingly, they showed absolutely no benefit in preventing hair graying. The researchers themselves found this a bit puzzling, considering 3 chemicals are structurally quite similar. Now let's get to the most important part, the results. This slide shows what happened with the topical or external application of the luteolin solution. Right off the bat, you can visually see a clear difference. The mice treated with luteolin retained significantly more of their natural hair color compared to the control group. But it's not just about the looks. Let's have a look at the biomarkers in the hair follicles where the hair actually grows. First up, we have a number of cells expressing P16. Remember, P16 is a marker of senescence or cellular aging. The researchers specifically noted they only observed senescent KSCs, not MSCs. And as we discussed earlier, these senescent KSCs are the starting point of the whole hair graying process. From the graph, we can see a significant reduction in P16 expression in the luteolin group, dropping from over 30% in the control group to under 20% in the treated group. Next, we have DCT positive cells. These are cells that express a protein involved in melanin production, essentially active melanocytes. In a control group, we see a dramatic drop to about 20% of the original level. But in the luteolin group, the number actually appears to have increased slightly. And finally, perhaps the most crucial result, the count of grey hairs. Over the course of the study, the luteolin group maintained a stable grey hair count of around 20%, while the control group saw a rapid increase, reaching nearly 100%. Now let's take a look at the results from the internal luteolin treatment. Just to remind you, these mice received luteolin in their drinking water for the same 16-week period. Visually, we can still see a difference between the treated group and the control group, but the effect is noticeably less pronounced than with the topical application. Looking at the biomarkers, we see a significant reduction in senescent keratinocyte stem cells in the treated group, but again, the reduction is less dramatic than what we see in the external treatment. The same pattern holds true for the number of active melanocytes. The luteolin group shows an increase, but it's not as substantial as with the topical application. And finally, we look at the percentage of grey hairs. We see a similar trend. The luteolin group has fewer grey hairs, but the difference is less striking compared to the external treatment. So in summary, while internal luteolin treatment did show positive effects, the external topical application was clearly more effective. Both methods appear to work through similar mechanisms, as we see the same changes in hair follicles, but the magnitude of the effect is different. Unfortunately, the paper doesn't provide specific numbers to quantify exactly how much less effective the internal treatment is. We do need to address potential funding sources and any conflicts of interest. According to the paper, the research was supported by various research organizations, which initially suggests a neutral funding source. However, when we look at the conflicts of interest section, we find that the study was also partially funded by a grant from Hoyu Company Limited. This raises a bit of a red flag as it seems to contradict the earlier statement about neutral funding. Hoyu is a company that specializes in hair care products, primarily hair coloring. While I couldn't find any specific luteolin-based products from them, their involvement does warrant some consideration. So what else can luteolin do? I dug into the research and I found a comprehensive review from just last year. This diagram summarizes the key findings. It's a potent anti-inflammatory and antioxidant. It also exhibits both anti-apoptotic and anti-cancer properties. Based on these qualities, studies suggest it can protect vital organs like neurons, heart, liver, and kidneys. Now, it's important to keep in mind that much of this research is based on animal models, so we need to be cautious about extrapolating these results to humans. However, there have been some clinical trials. These studies typically use doses of 100 to 300 milligrams per day and explored luteolin's effect on neuroinflammation, allergies, metabolic health, and UV protection. Interestingly, I couldn't find any clinical studies where luteolin was applied topically in humans. Finally, the good news is that luteolin appears to be generally safe. I couldn't find any evidence of significant toxic effects in the research. So you may be wondering, where can I get some luteolin? Well, let's explore its natural sources. This table from a fantastic resource called Phenol Explorer shows the average amount of various polyphenols, including luteolin, found in foods per 100 grams. As you can see, some herbs like thyme, rosemary, and celery leaves have significant amounts. However, let's be realistic. It's not exactly practical to eat 100 grams of these herbs in one sitting. Luteolin is also present in other vegetables like watermelon, peppers, and pumpkin, but in lower concentrations. This means while it's definitely beneficial to include these foods in your diet, relying solely on them to get a significant dose of luteolin might be challenging. That's where supplements could potentially come in handy. So there you have it. Hair graying is a common sign of aging, and while reversing it is still a challenge, delaying or preventing it is a goal many of us share. And as we've seen, luteolin may offer a promising strategy. Remember, while this study is intriguing, it's essential to consider the limitations. including the funding source and the fact that it was conducted on mice. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope that you found the information helpful.